Everywhere you look, the rich history of the United Kingdom is there to be seen. But hidden beneath our feet, there's still a wealth of archaeological treasure just waiting to be found. That's why each year, up and down the country, our archaeologists dig down, searching for fresh discoveries.
Another one.
Revealing the imprint of ancient civilizations.
Yeah. So we are looking at a completely unknown Roman town.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And unearthing priceless objects.
Might be a pendant.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
This is something special, isn't it?
Yeah, I've not seen anything like it so far.
Every dig adds new pieces to the ever-growing archaeological jigsaw
Gotta come and have a look.
that is the epic story of our islands. It's been an extraordinary year full of challenges, and yet I've been able to visit so many exciting digs up and down the country.
Oh my goodness.
There have been spine-tingling discoveries to witness.
That is the face of a Trojan.
Yes.
My heart is racing.
And I'm even getting a chance to use a trowel myself. I'm joined by a trio of expert investigators.
I can actually see the texture of the weave, and it's what, 1,600 years old?
It's amazing that a small DNA sample like this can tell that really quite big story.
As they dig deeper for answers.
Same technique as the Romans used.
Exactly.
Finally, the archaeologists bring their best finds into the studio.
Splash away. You can see that this object has had a life of its own.
For up-close analysis.
It's astonishing detail.
Welcome to Digging for Britain. This time we're going on an archaeological odyssey across the north of the UK. Hang on a minute, let me have a look at that then. At an awesome medieval castle, we witness the return of a famous king.
So that's the tiny face of William the Conqueror.
It is the tiny face of William the Conqueror.
Oh, that's superb.
A graveyard reveals the brutality of the industrial era.
The person's been bent right back and it's just snaps those pieces of bone off.
It's global injuries.
And while being saved from wild waves, and ancient tomb's inner secrets are uncovered.
And it appears to be a polished stone ball. Fantastic find.
Much of the north of Britain's history is defined by resistance, centuries of incursions, war, and stubborn revolts. Even William the Conqueror faced violent rebellions in the north. Soon after, he was crowned king in 1066. To maintain power, the Normans built castles, and our first dig takes us to one of the finest in Richmond, Yorkshire. This is Richmond Castle. It was built soon after the Norman conquest, nearly 1,000 years ago, and it is one of the oldest and best preserved Norman castles in the country. But the above ground remains that we can see really are just this outer curtain wall and the keep, and we think there's a lot more of it that's lain undisturbed for centuries under the grass. For the first time ever, a team of community volunteers are excavating inside the castle walls. They want to understand what life was like here during the medieval period, when the Inner Bailey would have been a vibrant, noisy place full of merchants and manufacturing. Archaeologist Jim Brightman of Solstice Heritage is leading the dig. And the first surprising discovery is that some rather large parts of the castle aren't medieval at all.
Tell me about this trench then, Jim. What's going on here? What are you trying to understand?
OK, so as we've gone down, you can probably see just there's a big bank of soil there in the section that this whole buttress is built on top of.
And there's a layer there's almost like a concrete or a mortar layer.
It is. It's a raft of concrete.
Hang on a minute, let me have a look at that then. OK, so this is a bit suspicious, isn't it?
It is.
That bit there.
That's him.
That's not medieval.
No, it really isn't.
So they've made a fake medieval castle. Well, it's not a fake medieval castle, but this bit is.
This bit is.
Yeah.
And it looks very much like perhaps we've had a big section of wall collapse.
Yeah.
And then the entirety of this, so that buttress, this buttress, all of this wall, a lot of this stone coming up here, it's all a bit fanciful. It's an invention of probably the early to mid 20th century.
Archaeology has an important role in uncovering little white lies like this rebuilt wall, but Jim's team of keen volunteers will be much happier unearthing genuine medieval artefacts.
What are you finding? I heard excited voices.
I think it's part of a skull, an animal skull.
How long have you been volunteering here?
Since 10 o'clock this morning.
Is it your first day?
Yeah.
Is it your first day doing archaeology? Have you dug before?
Yeah, no, I haven't really, no.
You've turned up wearing something white, I noticed.
Didn't really think about it, but it's fine. It all goes in the wash. It doesn't matter. I'm not bothered about that.
Community digs like this allow people to connect to their past, and nothing sparks more excitement than uncovering small objects that have lain hidden for centuries.
Here's the bone. Brilliant. Yeah. Good bone as well. Yeah, that looks like it's probably a bit of a rib.
But before the team can uncover any trace of the medieval period, they have to dig down through a parade ground that covers the site. Evidence of another crucial part of the castle's long history.
These higher levels are the World War I parade ground that covered most of the Inner Bailey, because the castle had this sort of second life. It had centuries when it was just in disrepair, no one really was using it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 19th century, a great big barrack block was built here and it became an army training camp. Yeah. And then in the First World War, it was a prison. So it's a fundamental part of the castle story.
In 1916, 2 years after the outbreak of World War I, men between the ages of 18 and 41 were conscripted into frontline military service. But some refused to bear arms, objecting on religious, moral, or political grounds. They were called conscientious objectors. Some were detained here at the castle, where they were then given the option to work in support roles, like cleaning and catering. But 16 of the men at Richmond refused even this work, so they were imprisoned on site in the Victorian cell block, facing the death penalty if they didn't comply. Astonishingly, there's a record of their personal thoughts that can still be seen in these cells. The writings and drawings are so delicate that changes in humidity would cause damage, but I've been given special access to see them.
This cell's just extraordinary.
There's just layers and layers and layers when you start to look at this graffiti. Thousands and thousands of inscriptions on the walls. And in amongst them, the thoughts of these conscientious objectors. Lots of quotes from the Bible, that religious impetus for conscientious objection coming through. But there's also a link with socialism too. There's something wrong with the working man who's not a socialist. He says there, this is crucial and powerful. You might just as well try to dry a floor by throwing water on it as try to end this war by fighting. The cell block was used to hold the conscientious objectors while they awaited their fate. Kevin Booth is in charge of preserving these delicate walls. It's a real damp and oppressive atmosphere in here. What would it have been like back in the First World War?
They had just bedboards for the night time, and they were removed during the day. So they have essentially this empty cell. But it isn't actually a grim space. There is no heating. This is their expression, I suppose. This is where they let out their emotions on the wall of these cells. And it is their way, in a way, I suppose, of just documenting their emotions, their beliefs, and the very fact that they were here.
On the 29th of May 1916, the conscientious objectors imprisoned here were transported to France and effectively forced into active service. And if they still refused to obey orders, they would face the firing squad.
So they knew that what they were doing, they knew their resistance could end up with them losing their lives. Did they?
It was commuted to 10 years hard labour, but that process, the process of isolation, both in a cell and socially when they got back, meant that many of them really struggled to come to terms with their life and their family and their friends after the war.
It's incredibly powerful. It's very personal, and you see these principles being pitted against something which is far bigger than them. And I think it's impossible not to view this as bravery.
I think we have to see the courage in it, and we have to see the absolute belief behind it. I mean, they're painted as cowards, they're painted as shirkers, as unpatriotic. It's very difficult when you read their accounts and understand the troubles that they went through on a personal level to see it as anything other than their own particular principled points of belief that they were determined to follow on.
The fact that these few men had stayed true to their principles helped to start changing the public opinion of pacifists and conscientious objectors. Back outside, and the team has dug through the military parade ground and is beginning to find evidence of medieval life here many centuries earlier.
What we're actually seeing is something that isn't part of the domestic life of the castle. It's sort of like the grand homes of the lords, and in fact the king, various kings stayed in this accommodation. It is the really utilitarian, the really kind of like the workshop areas where the grubby, the horrible tasks are being done.
Services.
Exactly, yeah. The evidence that we're getting is that this may be where the butchery was going on, processing of the animal carcasses, like the jaw bones, the hooves, things that might get taken away when you're skinning and dressing an animal before it goes off to the kitchens. You would not see the king walking past here, he stays over there.
Any royalty visiting the castle would enjoy a feast in the incredibly well-preserved Great Chamber Banqueting Hall. And details like these butchered animal remains help to build a more complete picture of medieval life inside these castle walls.
What have you got here then, Jim? This is something, well, it's not human, and it looks like it only has a single toe.
It's a horse.
Yeah.
So yeah, bottom of a horse's leg. It's one of the examples of the butchered bone that we've been getting out of some of the trenches.
Yeah.
This one in particular is a really clear chop mark. That's taken half the bone away, probably to extract the marrow.
Eating horses as well as
Eating
riding
horses
them.
As well as riding them in the medieval period, yeah. So we've had some of the more common local medieval pottery, but there's been some fantastic decorated examples here.
That's pretty.
It's really nice, isn't it? And some with a much deeper green than you normally see.
Yeah, that's lovely, really rich colour.
Really beautiful. And then even some of the plainer bits like this, probably a jug base, have got the finger pinches around the base.
Oh yeah, isn't that lovely?
Really nice. You can put your finger exactly where the potter did.
I mean, you're quite clear about the date.
Yes, this is all really classic medieval stuff. So it gives us a really nice impression both of the more mundane domestic ways, the cooking, the things like that, and then perhaps the things that might have graced the tables of the lords and ladies, knights here.
What's in the box?
I thought you were going to ask. Okay, so this is the only coin-like find that we've had.
Can I pick it up?
You can pick it up. It's quite fragile, but it's
a bit broken around the edges, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's really hard to make out.
It is. It's
anything
incredibly corroded.
Is it a little fleur-de-lis?
That's right, yeah. So we know that it's what's called a jeton. So it's not a coin, it's a type of trade or accountancy token used for counting on boards.
Right.
But it also serves as kind of a universal small change.
Right, okay. So it does have value.
It does have some value, yes. Yeah. But it's very specific, type dates to early 14th century, and it's French, hence the fleur-de-lis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really nice, very definitely dated to a big period of activity here in the castle.
I love what archaeology does, and that it nails you down to the ground, to the landscape. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic showing this kind of history. It's just so immediate. It's right there. People can really feel it.
Finds are coming in thick and fast, and one of Jim's first-time volunteers has found something rather special.
Hello.
Hi, guys. We've got something really exciting to show you.
Okay.
We've just found our second jeton.
Another one of those?
We have another one, yeah, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Okay,
so
let's
we
have a look.
wanted you to see it straight away. Unfortunately, it's broken.
Oh, wow.
But
okay.
we're really excited.
So who found this one?
I did.
Jenny.
Excellent work.
It's amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Each new find is revealing, but after a closer look at Jenny's jeton, we realise it's actually something far more exciting, and it can be precisely dated.
There's bad news and there's good news.
Okay.
The bad news is it's not a jeton.
Oh, okay.
It's actually a penny.
A penny?
So it's an actual silver coin.
Really?
And if you remember, there's the little face.
Yes.
Yes. It's William the Conqueror.
No. No.
It's a silver penny of William the Conqueror from
That's amazing.
immediately as this castle was being built.
Oh, that's superb.
That's incredible.
Not bad for your first day.
First day, first time ever digging. Wow.
I mean, that is a bit of a star find then, isn't it?
It's the earliest find we've had from the site, and it completely rewrites what's going on in Trench 2 as well. The floor of it contains something that someone dropped as the castle was being built.
Oh my, wow. That's the little face.
I can't believe you found that on your first day
Wonderful,
digging.
yeah. That's why you get involved in community digs. That is so phenomenal.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. William the Conqueror.
We've got evidence of the medieval feasts that took place here, and a coin which takes us right back to the very founding of the castle. With finds like this, the community team continue to piece together 1,000 years of history from this spectacular fortress.
Richmond Castle is such a perfect illustration of the way that objects change their meaning through time. And as objects go, it's a very large one. Built by the Normans, it would have been a symbol of domination and oppression in the landscape. Then it crumbles into romantic ruins and becomes a military base again during the First World War. And then all the way to the present, where we have the dig here, and archaeologists helping people to remember and understand all of that history.
We dig for the gods that leave no bones for ships and
From the medieval strongholds of northern England, we continue our journey northwards to much older settlements.
The most northerly reaches of the UK have a wild, untamed feel to them, and that's partly to do with the sparseness of the population, but also the climate and the weather. And that's what places archaeology at risk, the pounding waves and wind. Now, archaeologists can only rarely save such a threatened site, but they can hope to examine, record, and learn as much about it as possible before it's lost forever.
Our next dig is in the far north, perched on the coast of an island in the Orkney archipelago, Sanday. Neolithic people arrived in Orkney by boat more than 6,000 years ago, bringing farming to these islands for the first time. With over 70 islands and incredibly fertile land, Orkney was a Neolithic paradise. These islands are home to some of the oldest and best preserved monuments in Europe. Giant stone circles, temples, and settlements like the astounding Skara Brae, Europe's most complete Neolithic village. But one site is in real danger. Today, an astonishing chambered tomb known as Tresness sits right on Sanday's southern coast and is being battered by crashing waves. Now, archaeologists are racing against time to excavate the tomb and learn all they can about Neolithic burial practices here before the site is lost for good. The team from the University of Central Lancashire filmed their dig using our cameras in this, their fourth and final season.
So you can see I'm standing in Tresness chambered tomb. It's surviving more or less to head height. So back in the Neolithic, it would have only been a little bit higher than it's actually surviving today. So you can see these large upright orthostats which divide the chamber into different compartments or cells. And these are very, very well preserved.
Archaeologist Vicky Cummings hopes to find human remains in these chambers.
We haven't found any so far. It appears we've got quite poor bone preservation. One of the things that we have found, however, is some really well-preserved artefacts. And one of these things that has come up is a characteristic of the Orkney Islands, which is a scale knife.
The team have found more than 100 of these scale knives, stone tools thought to be used for cutting meat and preparing food. But this is a tomb. It would have been full of bodies and bones, not somewhere you might expect to find Neolithic kitchen knives. And soon afterwards, Vicky discovers something even more curious.
This is something that appears to be an artefact. We're not entirely sure. We're just going to clean it up and have a look what it is. And it appears to be a polished stone ball. Fantastic find.
It's a perfect ball. It's fantastic. That looks like an amazing rock. I can see it black with red in it. Some
red and purple.
It's amazing.
Only a handful of Neolithic polished stone balls like this have ever been found, far fewer in situ in their original context. And a few days later, this rare find grows into a small collection.
We have now found a second polished stone ball in a different compartment in the chambered tomb. This one isn't as well preserved, but it is a beautiful polished stone object.
The purpose of these mysterious stone balls is uncertain, but they would have taken a lot of skill and effort to create, so were clearly important. On the last day, Hugo Anderson Wymark unearths some exciting clues about what might have been happening inside the chambers of the tomb.
Just opposite the entrance here, we've got a really interesting feature. We've got a hearth. You can see all the red burning on the ground here, all the ash surrounding it. So it looks like one of the things they were doing, setting small fires at quite regular intervals. And amongst it, we're having small sherds of Unstonware pottery. So the classic early Neolithic bowl. So it's just what we wanted to find. But we're working hard to get the site wrapped up by the end of the season, which is today.
As the weather worsens, the team races to create a digital 3D model. This photogrammetry will ensure that we have a detailed visual record of the site before the encroaching waves eventually wash this incredible tomb into the sea. Back at the Digging for Britain tent, the weather isn't much better, but it hasn't stopped Vicky and Hugo bringing their finds from the Tresness site for me to have a closer look at. And their 3D model, stitched together from more than 500 high-res photographs, allows me to explore the site in incredible detail.
Is this the entranceway that we're seeing at the bottom of that picture there, Vicky?
No, so what we're actually dealing with here, this is the chamber, and it's actually divided up into different cells or compartments. So starting at the northern end, we've got 1, 2, 3, a big central one here, which is cell 4. And then this is a 5th. What's happened, though, is the end of that's disappeared through coastal erosion. We're guessing that this is actually the last of the cells of this monument, but we'll never know for sure because the bottom of the monument has been removed by the sea, effectively.
And that's why you're here excavating it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a site at significant risk.
So sadly, not much in the way of human remains then, but you have got some rather interesting finds, haven't you, Hugo?
Yes, and the artefacts tell us an immense amount of activity in the tomb. We had a big selection of stone tools, from scale knives, these flakes from cobbles that are very characteristic of Orkney. And so that's a bit of a surprise why we had 125 of these from a tomb. But, you know, these are normally seen as butchery tools. So perhaps they were being used for some sort of treatment of the dead. Perhaps they are being used to take the flesh off the bones, or at least clean the bones within the monument. So it's, again, a hint that there may well have been quite a few bodies within there at some time in the Neolithic.
So fascinating clue as to what might have been happening, some of the mortuary rituals that might have been going on in that tomb.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
And then the objects that really intrigued me were these balls, and you brought one of them along here. I mean, what is it? What's it for? What does it mean? Do we have any idea?
You know, I think we've certainly come across a lot of interpretations that suggest that it might be a weapon of some description. And I think that goes back to the fact that in chambered tombs from the early Neolithic, you often find individuals with a blow to the head from a blunt instrument. And yet they've put lots of time and effort and energy into turning it into this beautiful, polished object. So I think it could have other meanings as well.
This is a tradition which seems to be found along the west coast of Britain into Ireland around that period in the late Neolithic. So this object might really give us a lot more evidence about the connections between what we see now as a remote island, but was really a very connected place in the Neolithic.
So you've gained what information you can, you've rescued what you could before that was washed away for good.
That's right.
And now the tomb remains and hopefully will survive a few more winters.
Yeah, it could still be there in 100 years' time, but ultimately this is a site that is ultimately going to disappear into the sea.
And so
the north of Britain has a great history of invention and innovation. It was here in the 19th century that the first railway networks connected our towns and cities, kick-starting the modern world.
It's well understood how steam railways were completely crucial to the Industrial Revolution, transforming the transport of goods and people, especially across the heavily industrialised north. There were railways before steam, though, but they're much less well understood. Of course, where there are railways involved, there's always going to be a group of enthusiasts ready to put in the hard work to find out more.
For our next dig, we stay in Scotland, 10 miles east of Edinburgh, at the site of a very old stretch of track near Prestonpans. Most of the walkers who stroll along this footpath have little idea they're treading on what was once a pioneering horse-powered railway, predating the era of steam trains by nearly 100 years. The path is still known today as the Wagon Way, yet few records exist to explain how it worked. So, since 2017, more than 300 volunteers have been on a mission to dig under the footpath and discover how the tracks were made by the people who worked on Scotland's first ever railway. Ed Buthain is leading the dig.
We're at the midpoint of the Tranent-Cockenzie wagonway, built in 1722. It's bringing coal from Tranent, which is up the hill. The wagons are loaded with coal up there. They come down under gravity all the way down the hill using this gradient and down to the salt pans at Cockenzie, where the coal is loaded into furnaces.
Once the coal was unloaded at the salt works, horses would then drag the carts along the track back up the hill to the mine. and the trenches start to produce tantalising evidence to prove it.
Ink bottle. Oh, nice little ink bottle, fantastic. And a horseshoe, fantastic. Excellent, very good. Nice to find a horseshoe up here. Excellent, well done, guys.
Further up the embankment, there's a buzz of excitement as the team has uncovered a solid chunk of a very small iron rail.
That is outrageous. Look at that. That's what we're missing off the other one. Other bit.
The head.
Yeah, we're missing the head off the other one.
So tiny.
That's amazing.
That's absolutely brilliant, that is.
This piece of rail is thought to be from the most recent and final upgrade of the railway in 1815, nearly a century after the first wooden tracks were laid, and still 10 years before Britain's first public steam railway opened.
This is an iron fishbelly rail, so called because it has a curved shape, just like the underbelly of a fish. The running edge is here where the wheels of the wagons would have run along. And this is a really fantastic example, and one which we didn't expect to find, so it's really, really satisfying to find this.
As well as digging on the wagonway, the team is working on a second site over a mile away where the coal was dropped off at the end of the line to fuel the furnaces of the saltworks. Ed is hoping to find traces left by the people that lived and worked here.
So in each of these salt pans, a family would be operating it. They would have a living accommodation here as well, right next to their industrial process that they're supervising. And it was an incredibly hot, steamy, smoky environment, not great working conditions.
Families of workers tended fires to boil seawater in wide metal pans to extract the valuable salt. Incredibly, in amongst the remains of this dangerous industry, the team finds evidence of people living here too.
By pure chance, in the corner of the trench where we were excavating on top of the bedrock, we came across little pieces of brown and cream slipware. Here's one little piece of it. A little pot that had been jammed in, obviously at the time that it was built, or very soon after, probably during the construction. And we reckon from our initial investigations that that's dating some time to the early to mid 17th centuries.
The families living here made salt 24 hours a day, and the salt pan's insatiable furnaces are the reason the pioneering wagonway was built in 1722. Up the hill, traces of the original 300-year-old wooden rails are spotted by historian Anthony Dawson.
What we've got, you can just see it there.
Yeah, see
very
it.
fine black lens as we're feeling this back. It's coming through there. That, you can see that.
Yeah.
That is the outside, it's possibly the bark of the tree. We've then got this very hard, mineralised deposit, which again is probably part of the timber rail, and then in the middle we've got this soft black.
Yeah, it's like really rich material there, isn't it?
Rich organic. That is the width of your longitudinal rail. So we've got it from bark to bark, and now we've spotted that, we can look at it.
We can look at it on the other side and confirm our gauge at 4 foot,
It's
give
4
or
foot
take.
between each face. Yeah,
fantastic, absolutely brilliant.
As the dig progresses, the team discovers faint traces of more wooden rails, set slightly wider, suggesting they were replaced many times.
It's not surprising these were temporary railways that were built cheaply, quickly. That would last about 20 years and need completely replacing.
These finds reveal so much about the railway's construction and use, enabling the team to piece together a full history for each generation of this trailblazing track.
We've got the 1722 narrow gauge railway. We've then got wider 4 foot gauge. It gets rebuilt again for a third time, and then finally in 1815 they say, we've had enough of this, we're going to do the new wonder technology.
Let's go to iron.
Let's go to iron.
Yeah. So we've got the whole story the whole way through.
Yeah.
These digs reveal fascinating small-scale experiments in rail technology, which would lay the groundwork for the revolutionary age of steam. To get more insight into life and work on the wagonway, Ed has brought some of his discoveries to the Digging for Britain tent for me to have a closer look.
I think I've got a photo of the dig down at the actual, what do we call them, salt houses?
Yeah, a salt pan house or a salt house, yeah. This is the reason that the wagonway exists. This is an existing salt industry which has been established in 1630 by the Earl of Winton. From this salt pan house, we've got this lovely bit of slipware dish, which you can see there. So we've had enough of it there to fashion a replica.
In pieces, yeah, you can see the shape and the radius of the bowl.
You see the scale of it, and it's actually a very nice domestic dish from within a salt house, an industrial building.
Yeah.
But we've also got people living in there as well.
Does that tell us something about who was working there and what that industry was like for them?
I think these are people that are working on in this industry 24/7, pretty much.
Yeah.
And they don't have any other options in terms of where to live. This is what's been provided by the landowner.
So Ed, that's the trench that you found the railway in.
Yeah.
And is that part of the rail itself then?
Yeah. So this rail is probably 3 times as long. It's about 1 metre in length, and it's thicker in the middle for strength, thinner at the end. This is where we always find them broken, essentially, but we're in the realms of experimental railway technology. They were constantly working out new ways of doing things, and they did realise that this wasn't a great design, and it only lasted a few decades. We then get onto more robust iron rails in the middle of the 19th century.
So you're seeing a very early manifestation, almost like an early prototype.
Absolutely. 1815 it's only a year after Trevithick built the steam engine.
Yeah.
From Scotland, we move south, beyond the border once marked by Hadrian's Wall as the edge of the Roman Empire. South of this boundary, the British landscape holds plenty of evidence of Roman occupation and settlement, giving archaeologists vital information about how people lived in the 4 centuries of Roman rule.
When we think about Roman archaeology, it's often the villas and bathhouses and forts that come to mind, but we mustn't forget why the Romans were in Britain in the first place, and a big part of that was the mineral wealth, especially here in the Peak District. And archaeology can reveal traces of Roman industrial activity in the landscape, just as in this next dig.
One of Britain's richest sources of minerals is 15 miles from Sheffield in the stunning Peak District, where our next site is tucked away in the Hope Valley. Now, as a modern-day shale pit is set to expand, a team from Archaeological Research Services has been called in to investigate. The team is unearthing a previously unexplored Roman site with over a dozen buildings dating back to the 1st century. And more intriguingly, a geochemical survey is revealing clear traces of a crucial natural resource the Romans treasured: lead. Tom Parker is leading the dig.
The Romans really had complete dependence on lead. You know, they built all of their water pipes from lead. The bathhouses, ceiling for windows. Lead for Romans was like plastic for us. It just got everywhere.
Despite that dependence, lead ores were scarce in mainland Italy. But here on the fringes of their empire, the Romans found a rich source to exploit.
We've effectively got over 100 times background reading for lead concentrated in this 2-metre wide area right here, which basically says they're doing something here with lead. The only thing we can think is it's an industrial process. There aren't really people living here, and whatever byproduct they're getting from this isn't being stored here.
The Romans melted lead to form ingots, which could be easily transported across the empire, with the lead making its way into pots, pans, and water pipes. Perhaps the best way to understand how that Peak District lead was turned into useful items is by recreating ancient techniques. Dr. Stuart Pryor has come to see some Roman-style leadworking in action.
I always think there's no better way to understand ancient practices than to try them ourselves. So using experimental archaeology, I'm going to investigate how the Romans made their water pipes with lead specialist Peter Rumley.
So, Peter, what am I looking at?
Well, Stuart, what you're looking at here is a sand bed tray for casting lead in, sheet lead. And this is exactly the same kind of bed the Roman plumber would have used. But the first thing we do, we have to put in the sand.
The sand needs to be as smooth as possible because it will shape the surface of our lead sheet.
So we've got the bed all set up. What's the next step?
What happens here now, Stuart, is the most dangerous and exciting part of the process.
So I need to get out of the way?
You need to get out of the way,
Right.
and I suggest you move back.
The molten lead is incredibly hot. It's heated to 327.5 degrees Celsius, so it can flow like a liquid over our sand bed.
Lovely, look at that, gorgeous. Superb.
Beautiful.
Just like lava.
Wow. It's absolutely amazing. I can't believe you get such a beautiful flat sheet out of that. Just feel the heat coming up from here.
Yeah. We'll lift this up.
Look at that, that's beautiful.
There it is. We can make our pipes from this, and that hasn't changed for thousands of years, as it would have been done throughout the whole Roman Empire.
When the Romans did this, they did it on an industrial scale, pouring molten lead into huge sheets 10 feet long. Then, just as we are here, they bent the flat lead sheets around wooden posts to make their pipes.
And this was done right up, like this, until the 1950s in certain areas. Now we've created a seam, a very simple seam.
The Romans made their pipes watertight by sealing the joints with a mixture of lead and tin.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. I sealed that up.
That should have sealed. Now we're taking this off. And there we have the lead pipe, soldered and ready to take water.
And that's been employed all over the Roman Empire?
Exactly.
It's incredible to think that the lead processed in Derbyshire might have ended up as urban plumbing in the Roman capital. But you don't have to go that far to see authentic Roman lead work. Here in Bath, the world-famous Roman baths still have their original lead pipes. These pipes were produced exactly like the ones I made. Cooled up lead sheets with sealed seams along the top. Stephen Clues manages this stunning site.
This is one of many lead pipes that were used in the baths here. The lead pipes are bringing water in from the spring to distribute it through the whole of the bathing system.
Lead pipes are crucial for directing water here from the spring. But archaeologists have discovered that Roman bathers also had a far more curious use for it.
There's very fine scratch marks. That's all you're looking for.
These tiny sheets and blobs of lead are covered in delicate writing left by Roman visitors thousands of years ago.
They're known commonly as curse tablets.
Right. So these are the words of the Romans.
Someone is at the baths, comes back having spent an hour or two of pleasant relaxation, finds that some of their possessions have gone, is so cross and angry, enlists the services of a scribe to help him write the note, and then throw it into the goddess. demanding justice.
That's amazing, amazing. So not only are the Romans using lead to build their bars and make the pipes, they're also using it for other purposes as well. The messages people inscribed often asked the gods to put a curse on someone who had wronged them.
This one has a message to Minerva, the goddess Sulis, asking that the person who has stolen their hooded cloak should only be allowed redemption if they give their own blood for that.
I'm absolutely amazed that, you know, these tiny little fragments of lead contain the thoughts and wishes of people from thousands of years ago. What they were thinking, how annoyed they were. You know, it's so human. It's a little glimpse into the people's lives back then.
It's clear that mining was important business in Roman Britain. But it would be another 1,500 years before British industry would completely take over the landscape. The red brick chimneys, factories and terraces of our cities tell of a dynamic period that changed almost every aspect of daily life. The Industrial Revolution. The cogs of industry in Britain began to turn in the late 18th century, but it was during the 19th century that the revolution really got up ahead of steam. One of the superhighways of the Industrial Revolution was the Humber Estuary, and I'm visiting a dig at its most important port in the city of Hull. As the industrial age progressed, Hull flourished into a vibrant hub of whaling and shipping, a gateway for imports from all over the world and exports from the boom towns of Yorkshire.
Just a quick tour around here, looking at the commercial buildings and the docks. It's clear that Hull is a city with an exciting past, and some of that past is being unearthed right now.
The main road along this historic riverfront is expanding, so to make space, archaeologists are set to lift, move and rebury a century's worth of graves. During Hull's golden era of prosperity, the population exploded from around 7,000 at the beginning of the 18th century to nearly 200,000 by 1900. Just one of the challenges for the growing city was where to bury all of the dead. Trinity Burial Ground was an overflow cemetery for the overwhelmed local churchyard. Steve Rowland is leading the dig here.
Steve, this is a huge site to be managing.
Yes, it is quite big, isn't it?
How many graves were in this whole area?
It's hard to say how many graves there are. We've found the remains so far of just over 7,500 people.
Right.
We're expecting about 9,500.
I mean, it is a huge area, but if you're talking about 9,000 individuals, that's quite dense.
That's right. The overall excavation area is just under 3,000 square metres, so it's getting on for about 3 people per square metre. We think the earlier graves start out really quite well ordered, and the grave digger stacks people up in the graves, and then after a while, as they run out of space, it's almost as if he puts them anywhere he can, really, and often with little regard to those that have been buried before.
I mean, it seems almost like a medieval burial ground.
Yes, it's been quite an eye-opener.
Some of the remains here show signs of terrible injuries that could well be linked to the burgeoning technology of the industrial age. The most infamous disaster in Hull took place on the dockside in 1837. The boiler of a new steam-powered ship called the Union Steam Packet exploded with around 100 people on board.
And it's described by this eyewitness who talks about the preparations being made for quitting the shore, with cheerful voices heard in every direction, handkerchiefs being waved, the packet bell ringing to signal that the ship is about to leave, and then the explosion happening. The sound was like that which may be conceived to be heard at the blowing up of an immense powder magazine or bursting cannon from a hostile shore. So it would have shook the ground here. It was awful and horrifying, terrific as Mount Etna's dreadful roar. It rent the air and shook the solid ground. This was the worst industrial disaster in Hull's history.
Victims of this very disaster may have been buried in Trinity Burial Ground. In the site's osteology lab, one skeleton in particular shows evidence of severe and widespread trauma. Osteoarchaeologist Lauren McIntyre has been carefully piecing it together, recording the injuries this person suffered.
Lauren, you think this is potentially a victim of a Union steam packet disaster?
So the types of trauma that this person has sustained really strongly suggests that they were in a significant blast. Probably the most obvious thing is in the skull. You can see this large crack radiating through the back of the cranium.
That's a horrendous fracture.
It's huge. And then these types of injuries that you can see on these 4 vertebrae are caused by hyperextension of the spine.
Yeah.
So basically the person has been bent right back, like in an unnatural way, and it's just snapped those pieces of bone.
Oh, gosh. So this is this C7, isn't it? The really knobbly one on the back of your neck just there, vertebral prominence. So that's been shattered. What about these ribs? What do you think about these?
So these are probably our most compelling evidence of blast trauma. In this particular rib, in the 3rd one, we've actually got a butterfly fracture. So the actual rib has bent to an extent that a fragment has popped out of the centre of it.
Yeah. I mean, this is just horrendous, isn't it?
It's really serious.
It's global injuries. This is somebody who has had their face blown apart, fracturing the side of their skull, shoulder broken, forearm broken, cervical spine shattered as their head is thrown back. It's quite horrific when you look at it like this.
It is.
I think you can be quite definite about this, can't you?
I think it's a very compelling case.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what else it could be due to.
Yeah.
Thinking about equivalents today, you'd be talking something like a car accident or worse to produce that kind of fracture. I think given the cranial trauma, we could probably assume it was quite quick.
Yeah, yeah.
There are clues here from the skeletons themselves, but also from the style of burials. And some graves are clearly trying to stand out.
The majority of the burials are earth graves, but the well-to-do people have got a bit more space and have built themselves a range of these tomb-like structures.
Would these have been family tombs? Do you tend to find more than one individual in them?
Yes, most of them have 2 or 3, if not more people. So we've got at least 2 individuals on this side that we can see.
Oh, yeah, so there's a rather well-preserved skull there, and then I can see another skull just below it. So when you've got those brick tombs above ground, you're pretty sure that as you dig down, this is what you're going to find?
That's right, yes.
Inside the tombs, the team is discovering a range of fascinating burial practices, capturing each one on our Dig Diary cameras.
So you can see the discoloration from the copper alloy, and there's the coin or token lodged in the eye socket, and this would be the other eye, hopefully where we'll find another coin.
Placing coins on the eyes of the dead was an ancient practice and became common again in the Victorian period, possibly to keep the deceased's eyes closed.
What we have here is a skeleton of a woman, a female. You can see here around the coin on this eye is the preservation of the soft tissues, and on the other side what you have behind where the coin was sat here is the eyelid that's also been preserved.
Christian burials are often expected to be free of grave goods, but here the team are uncovering a number of objects buried with the dead.
As I was cleaning, I'd seen this little like blue-green spot on the bone, and I thought, oh, it could be a shroud pin, so I carried on going down, but it's turned into more. So it looks like it might be some sort of jewellery, some pendant. It's copper alloy. It's got a couple of little flowers on it and a stone.
Each item found in a grave gives us a unique insight into that individual. But some of the more spectacular artefacts reveal how closely the people of industrial age Hull were tied to the sea. Senior Finds Officer Lisa Wastling is giving me an exclusive chance to see some of these fabulous objects before they're reburied along with their rightful owners.
That is absolutely beautiful. Do you know anything about the grave that was found in?
It was found with a man. It was up by his head, and it was obviously a very treasured possession at the time, because you can see it's been fixed with 2 iron bands.
Yeah, it's lovely. Is it a beer mug, do you think?
It was definitely used for beer, I'd say.
Yeah, it's like a kind of more modern form of a beaker burial, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what about this little naked lady? What is she?
She was probably made as a little trinket or talking piece. She would have had swinging arms, and she was probably made to dance, which is quite likely to have been carved by a sailor on his travels.
I think she's lovely, she's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting is if you look at her hair, it's not typical of the period, and it may well be some lady that the chap has encountered on his travels.
Who knows?
Who knows?
We'll never know. Now, what about this curious little object? What's this? He's very pleased to see us,
Isn't
Lisa.
he? So what he is what they call a pipe tamper, which was used when you were smoking a clay pipe to compress the tobacco.
I mean, an extraordinary level of detail there.
Exactly. But we've got to remember that at the period, both men and women smoked clay pipes. So it doesn't necessarily have to have been a man smoking accessory.
Ah, it could have belonged to a woman.
It could.
I love these objects. They personalise these individuals in the burial ground, and we're seeing glimpses of their lives, aren't we? And this fantastic sense of humour, sex and sexuality, and then Hull as a city on the ocean reaching out across the world. So we're kind of seeing the identity of that city in this period as well.
I mean, absolutely. Hull, although it's on the east coast, its maritime history stretched over large areas of the world.
All sections of society end up here in the cemetery. This incredible dig at Trinity Burial Ground is both an extraordinary opportunity for archaeologists to investigate Hull's society during a crucial time in its history, and a reminder that every grave has an intimate and personal story to go with it.